AOTV Productions is with us here live, and he says, hey, guys, Cody Rhodes said in an interview on ESPN that he believes he, Punk, or Rollins would take over for Triple H one day. What do you think, John?
I hadn't thought about that. Triple H is pretty young, and I don't know. He could be there quite a while. But, yeah, I think all three of those guys could do a great job with it. I've told you many times when you walk into a wrestler's meeting or go over a finish or going over an angle or storyline or something, there's always one guy that talks. You just have certain respect, and certain guy has the acumen that everybody cedes to him. These three guys are those guys, and I think they'd all do a wonderful job. They're all small guys. It's a tough job. I mean, it's really, and they all have the intelligence to do it. Triple H was trained by Vince for years to run the company, and the one difference was this is not a wrestling company. This is truly a business, an entertainment business. That's was the difference between Vince and Crockett and Vince and Fritz and Vince and Vern and all these guys. He was putting together a business, and that's a big difference. And a lot of that comes training. I remember Michael Hayes, in my opinion, is a brilliant guy. He told me he sat down with Vince. Vince showed him how to book. He said it was like he had never booked before. Vince was so far ahead of him. So I think Triple H has a huge lead on these guys. But when it's, what Vince did for Triple H could do for one of these guys. I think they all have the intelligence to do it.
I didn't see this, but AOTV Productions is saying that Ronda Rousey has criticized AJ's return match, saying it was awful and her match at Mania 34 was better and created more buzz. You think she's just bitter? Man, where does this coming from, John? Damn.
I don't know. I don't know why. I don't get it. She's one of the greatest MMA stars of all time. She did great in WWE. She sold a ton of whatever you call them at the time. It was not pay-per-views. We were about streaming or whatever you do then. She was great, and I don't know why this bitterness has come out.
AOTV Production says Ricochet responded to ESPN's C grade of WrestlePalooza, saying that AEW shows was way better than that. You think he did that on his own, or someone asked him? I mean, this is just a guy pulling for his own company, right? That's all we're talking about.
Yeah. I love what Ricochet's doing. He seems like a great guy, and every time I talk to him, I really like him personally. But what he's done with the social media, I think he's been fantastic. He's always creating something controversial. He always sticks up for his product, but he always finds a way to put himself over, and he does a great job of doing that. So I love what he's doing. I think it's perfect for both AEW and for himself.
James McCone is with us here live, and he says more Conrad ads. Yes, sir. But if you want to hear these without ads, you can check us out at adfreeshows.com. Just want to give a quick plug there. And while we're doing that, by the way, we should shout out top guy Kelly Cox, who's been with us since a few days before Christmas, December 22nd of 2020, one of our top guys there. Also want to love on another legacy member, Ryan Connolly. He signed up in our first month of ad-free shows. That's Ryan Connolly, who started with us on April 16th, 2020. And David Johnson just signed up this year. Want to give him some love. Appreciate all of our family members joining us live here tonight from adfreeshows.com. I do want to talk a little bit about ESPN. There was a WWE-centric media call with ESPN executives this past week, John, and ESPN Plus Senior Vice President J.T. Lasker and Vice President of Programming and Acquisitions Matt Kinney fielded various questions, and one of those was asking if the people who are covering ESPN would have what he called editorial independence. And the answer was, I think the answer to that is an emphatic yes, said Lasker. And Kenny followed with an unequivocal yes, adding there's a separation of church and state. We have some PR folks on the call that can underscore that, but yes. And I think that speaks to that when we saw Hale come out with a C rating, which I'll admit I didn't see coming. But is this the new TKO approach? I mean, people have been pretty loud and proud and critical of the UFC for a long time when they were covering things on the MMA side of things. And I recognize that MMA and pro wrestling are different. But once upon a time, a guy like Ariel Helwani wound up getting himself banned from UFC events because he reported something, Brock Lesnar related as it would be, that Dana White just didn't want out there yet. I think they've mended fences in the last calendar month and everything's back to normal again. But it does feel like things are changing now. And maybe you can be more critical. It's an about face for WWE from a PR perspective, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. And, I understand what Dana was doing. I understand what Vince, if he was here, he'd be doing. And I understand what WWE is probably going to be doing. I mean, look, just because you give them editorial integrity doesn't mean you allow them to write all kinds of bad stuff. Maybe you just don't use them. I mean, if a guy's going to come on and bash your own product, I mean, there's a part there where you're saying, okay, we got to allow some of this, but at some point it's going to hurt business. I mean, I just think that it can be a really bad idea. That's what I'm talking about with Hell. I just don't think the first one is where I would have chose to do that. I understand you're showing the independence, but it's human nature. If I'm the boss and this person's writing all kinds of negative stuff about my company, I'm going to find a way not to use him at some point. And if he's writing it and it's balanced, I get that. And, people are following him. It creates more buzz. There's a fine line there between allowing something that creates a lot of buzz and people that are just negative. And the people that are just negative, I can almost guarantee you, they're going to find a way that they're going to get rid of them. That's just business. You have a theater, you have a restaurant, anything, and somebody's writing a negative report about you and he's working for you. It's human nature that you're going to find a way to shut him up or her up. Do you think the same?
Yeah, listen, I think that this is a slippery slope because we've got people who are, I mean, let's be clear. Hale is a legit reporter who has a sporting news background. He's covered more than wrestling for a long, long time, but he's also been a friend to WWE. I mean, he really put over the Seth Rollins, the biggest ruse of this millennium or whatever story several weeks ago. So even if John Pollock, the minute the Seth injury happened on TV said, this is a work, Hale was at least saying, hey, it was well done. He was complimentary. So I guess what I'm saying is he's not an AEW bot. He's not a WWE hater, but I think it's okay if he shares his opinion because I think he, like I am a hardcore fan. And I think that show with all of the hype and all of the anticipation and all of the promotion, we couldn't help but have some perhaps unrealistic expectations. We needed the show to be the greatest series of matches in the history of ever with 13 twists and turns and surprises. People were half-ass expecting, will The Rock do something? Well, I mean, they wanted stuff that is maybe a little unrealistic. And I think it's because of the media press, but the media press wasn't for us. It was for people who wouldn't normally be watching the show. So I think we just needed to manage those expectations a little better, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. And what I'm thinking is, look, I understand if he sounds like a good reporter, sounds like a good guy. I don't know him, but my point is that this is on a website that people are not hardcore fans. There'll be some hardcore fans on there, obviously, but most are not. I mean, if I'm just scrolling through and I'm seeing what's in the NFL today or seeing what's on baseball today, and I see this review and I don't know anything about the product, then I take this review and I just kind of take it at face value without everything you're saying. So I think the placement of it could be bad. I think it is bad. I think it's bad. To me, it's a bad look. And if I'm the writer, if I'm Hell, I'm going to find a way to put a different review in there. I just think it's something that, WWE's probably going to allow, but at some point they're going to find a way to cut off some of those bad reviews because it's going to hurt their business.
If I can be critical of one part of it, I would say that I think Triple H may have accidentally participated in some of this when he did an interview that morning where he said, hey, expect surprises. Now, that's not to say that there weren't some surprises. Maybe the biggest was we saw Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman get back together again, and we did see a title switch. But I think when you say expect surprises, people's minds just go bananas with what could be. I remember at the height of the pandemic, AEW ran a show at Daly's Place, their outdoor venue right there adjacent to the Jag Stadium. And Tony Khan had tweeted and promoted that, hey, he had a huge surprise, an absolute Hall of Fame wrestler and someone who was in his personal top 10. And, man, I was in the crowd and people were saying, oh, it's Brock Lesnar. Oh, it's John Cena. And no disrespect, it wound up being Christian. And I think those fans who thought it was going to be Brock Lesnar or John Cena, they may have been disappointed. Had it not been promoted as if it was going to be a surprise and a top 10 and one of his all-time favorites, and people allowed their imaginations to go wild. And I think if it was just Christian with no real announcement, people would have lost their minds, but maybe the improper expectation was set.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's the problem you have now with these big shows. There are so many big shows. And you can't just throw everything at it. You can't hot shot book. You know, you used to could do stuff like that. You can't now because you have so many shows. So you literally have to pace yourself with surprises. You can't, you know, I know the fans want to see it all the time, but if you, you know, it's kind of like The Walking Dead. You know, if you let fans book that, they'd have killed the governor in the first episode, you know, because that's going to be cool. It's going to be fun. That's the reason I like the Blacklist, because generally they're like episodes are like one episode's in a silo and the guy gets killed at the end, you know. But if you want to draw somebody in, you got to extend it for a couple seasons like they did with the governor on Walking Dead. With WWE, it's very much the same now. There's only so much you can do. There's only so many returns from Brock. You know, you got to be able to space this stuff out. So you got to book this thing episodically. And because of that, I think you're going to see some fans disappointed. And, you know, when Hunter says something like that, people are going to, oh my goodness, The Rock's coming back. You have this come back. And all of a sudden the mind goes crazy.
SaveWithConrad.com. My name's Daryl. Came from Massachusetts and I moved to Wisconsin. And there's a lot of people that might be asking, why go with Conrad? Why go with Supreme Lending? And let me tell you something, brother. I think about the credentials, the tag team partner that I'd be working with. First of all, we got the podfather himself, Conrad. How can you go wrong with that? And then also go on to SaveWithEric.com, which, you know, who else could have kicked Vince's ass for 83 consecutive weeks? You can't beat that duo right there. But they did bring a secret weapon, and I didn't realize this because this was not advertised. I worked closely with Larry the Axe Thompson. And let me tell you, with all the stress with moving across the country with a large family that I have, it was reassuring to know that I had the enforcer at my back, handling questions from the other side of sellers, the other side with trying to find the right prices. He took care of all that. All I had to do was keep my eye on the prize and make it there to Wisconsin. They were absolutely fantastic. They checked in on me, especially Francis, very patient with me. I don't go through this process all the time, so I trusted the experts. I was able to call them. They called me if they had questions, and it felt like it was a personal arrangement. There was even a point in which, from the seller side, they wanted something else that wasn't part of the norm. Francis straight up told me, hey, we're loyal to you. We'll do whatever you want to do, and we'll make sure that you guys are taken care of. They came through. I made it to the dream. I'm the champion of my own destiny here. They were able to help pave the way for me and my family. I couldn't be more happy with the results. I went from having less than an acre to now 20 acres worth of land. They made that dream a reality. I'm Daryl, and I'm living in Friendship, Wisconsin, in my dream home, thanks to SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.